All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Current, the North Central Region Water Network Speed Networking webinar series. For those who aren't familiar with the North Central Region Water Network, we are a 12-state extension-led collaboration working to steward water resources across the North Central region and amplify the impact of extension. This webinar series is now in our 10th year. We just celebrated our 100th webinar. And for those who are not familiar, it's a speed networking webinar series. So we feature 3 presentations on a similar topic or theme, giving you a high-level overview of some of the work that's happening across the region on a certain water-related topic. Today, we're going to be covering a topic I'm very excited to talk about, communicating conservation through curriculum. A couple of logistical things for you. First off, we're going to have 3 presentations, and then following the 3 presentations, we will have dedicated Q&A. So please put your questions for the panelists in the Q&A panel. You can find that at the bottom of your screen. We also have the chat. The chat feature is really for any logistical or technical questions you may have, or any resources or links folks would like to share. But please put your questions for the panelists in the Q&A panel to ensure that we see them during the question portion of today. If you're experiencing any technical issues or have any questions about the North Central Region Water Network or the current webinar series, you can put those in the chat feature and we can try to answer those. I should also note that we do use the upvote feature. So if you see someone else's question and you have a similar question, please upvote that. I will take the most upvoted questions first. Also, if you're having any audio issues, there is a phone-in option that can be accessed via clicking the up arrow on the mute icon and clicking switch to phone. This session is being recorded, and we will put the recording and the PowerPoint slides up on our website, northcentralwater.org. You can also visit our media archive, where we have the recordings of all 100 webinars we've had at northcentralwater.org/media archive. All right, let's jump into it. As I noted, I'm very excited about today's topic. My background is in science communication. So I'm excited to feature 3 great communicators today and 3 great educators. Leslie Johnson from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Jess Esplanchade from the National Wildlife Federation, and Becky Sapper, who works at the University of Wisconsin Division of Extension. Each are going to be talking about their own educational program, and each of these educational programs is really innovative in their own way in terms of how they are teaching and how they are engaging their participants. So I'll let the speakers talk each about them. First up, we have Leslie Johnson. I mentioned Leslie works for Nebraska Extension. She is an animal manure management educator. She's also very highly involved with the livestock and poultry environmental learning community and the Soil Health Nexus. Excited to have you here, Leslie. Thanks for joining us. Stop sharing and hand it over to you.
All right. Sorry, I didn't realize that I had muted myself. So let's get started sharing my screen here. Well, thank you everybody for this opportunity to speak to you. I told the gals when we met to do our tech check that I could talk about this for hours, and I'm going to next week actually, and so you'll see that here in a bit. But I'm really excited about this mapping exercise that we do. Just as a little bit of background, no, hopefully, there we go. Just a context, our land application training is for livestock producers that have a waste control facility permit. They're required to attend every 5 years. And so these are the things that we have to cover. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but you can see the ones that are starred are the ones that we don't do mapping exercise for. We have essentially replaced almost our entire program with this mapping exercise. So it's very interactive, and we have a lot of compliments on it when we're done with it. Just so you know, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the evolution. That was one of the things that it's been a wonderful experience, but it started out as a very small idea. Like, we pilot tested in 2020. We had about 6 activities, and like I said, it's grown and it covers all of our curriculum now, and it actually does a lot more of that. We've actually had some scenarios adapted for other trainings and those kinds of things to get to where we're at now. I said that I'm going to talk about this for hours next week. That's because I'm doing a Train the Trainer event. If anybody is coming out to the Manure Expo, I highly encourage you to check it out. Let me know that you want to learn more about this, and I will gladly get you started in my Train the Trainer event that we're doing out there next Tuesday. So to get into the curriculum, I don't even know how to start with this. If you are going to host this program, you're going to see a very large map. It's made from essentially it's a tablecloth. It's one of those like scientific posters that's on cloth. And so you can see that it takes up 3 of the skinnier tables at our programs. And we spend the majority of our class in this scenario around this map, and it's 5 by 5 square, so 5 square miles area, and we place multiple maps on there that have more field information about those fields. You can kind of see, if I point here, I think you can probably see. Let me get my laser pointer out here. You can see there's a few places on here where we actually put different fields on there. On the back of it's more information. There are really high resolution pictures so they can kind of look at the topography of their fields. We place houses on there. It does come with a facilitator's guide that we have developed in order to help people that want to teach this. So it walks you through how to utilize the map, how to set it up, why we set it up the way we did. And you get to choose the scenario that best fits your participants. And when I say the scenario, I mean we have 7 different choices for animal feeding operations that have that are relevant here in Nebraska. We did get this initially started with Minnesota, not just Nebraska. And so while we don't have a lot of turkeys in Nebraska, they do in Minnesota. And so that's why there's the turkey one there. But we do have all of those other things in Nebraska. And so we actually added the layer chicken later because we didn't have that initially. The mapping exercise started out with 4 fields. We've expanded it up to 7 as we added those nitrogen management things for the other trainings. Some of those fields have irrigation, so it's very relevant to Nebraska in that way, but some of them don't because not everybody is an irrigated farmer that we're working with. We have currently different rotations and expected yields. Most of them are growing corn because it's Nebraska. We grow mostly corn prior to, if we're going to put manure on, we're probably putting that manure on ahead of corn, though it does occasionally happen in front of wheat. And so that's why we chose those. But that's one of the things that I want to expand in the future is to add other cropping systems to it. All of those fields have different manure histories. Some is recent, some has never had manure. So we have those things to think about, as well as different soils and the different topography that you can see on those really enlarged maps. What I'm showing here in the picture is actually the newest version of it, where when initially all of this data in this top purple boxes was given to the producers, and those are new activities that we've added. We've showed them how to get that information for their own farms. So when they walk out of the program, they can utilize the worksheets that we've given them, and they can look at their own manure analysis. They can tell you what those numbers are. They can figure out what that crop available is next year, and then what that potential value is worth for the nutrients that are actually in there. And so, like I said, we used to give this information out. Now, as part of the added curriculum, we actually have them use this as a record book, which also instills how to keep records as well. So just to give you an idea of some of the activities here, I'm going to focus on 4 of them because they're kind of the 4 different types. We have the water quality one. It's like a checklist style worksheet. They're looking for water quality factors, whether they're high risk or low risk. And I'm going to show you a preview of these in the next slide, but I want to go through them first. We have manure impacts on soil health, which compares to ranges. So it's similar to if you go in for a physical and you get your blood work back and you see, okay, what does that number mean? It doesn't mean anything to you unless you look at the normal range. So, and you need to look at the normal range for your age group or your sex or whatever. So we look at it from the different soil types. and compare those. And so that's a comparison to ranges. Of course, everything that you can change in farming, everything that you can really impact and make a difference in farming, and actually make decisions on is some kind of math. So there's lots of different math worksheets. Agronomic value is the one that I am showing there. And then the last one is my particular favorite to watch because it really is like gets the producers super engaged. It's what I call the manure logistics. And essentially that we have them pick out a place on their field where they want to put that stockpile. They have to draw on there what the setbacks might be, and then they have to figure out how to get their manure from the livestock facility to the field and think about all of the different factors that come into play as they do that. And so it's a very active one. We actually have them pull out tape and tape right on there what their route would be to get to the field. And it gets them super engaged, and it's just really fun to watch. You can see at the bottom, I'm not going to go through and list them. Those are the other activities that we also have, or most of them anyway. So this is what some of those worksheets look like. We tried very hard to have them one page. They might be front and back, but most of them are front side only, just for simplicity, so that there's not a lot of confusion. You can see the math one, the agronomic value here towards the back of the slide. Then we have the soil health. These are the normals to compare against. And then we have the water quality, the checklist. There is a worksheet, but it's not really used as a worksheet. It's more like a reference page for the setbacks and stockpiles one. The other thing that makes this really fun and really memorable is at the end of many of the exercises, we give them a poop emoji card, and they can be a positive poop emoji card like these green ones, or it can be a negative poop emoji. And essentially what it means, it's a way of remembering those worksheets in a very visual form. So at the end of the activity, they get a green one if that field is going to receive a benefit from using manure, or if it's going to cost too much or it's going to be a loss because of using manure, or we're going to impair water quality because we use manure on that field, then they would get the red emoji card. And they actually place those on their field and they collect them. As you can kind of see here in the picture, they collect them on their field. And then at the end, we have them prioritize. Okay, reality is we can't put all of our manure on one field. We have to use all of them. So let's prioritize which field is the best field for manure. And so it kind of brings it all together, and they have to work as a group around this table. And so it creates a lot of bonding between producers. Some of the things that we've learned through doing this, and I am a slow learner on this last one. We've been using this since 2020, and it just hit me this year. You know, if we use name tags, we wouldn't have to spend time introducing people, and people would still get that introduction. So people do appreciate knowing who they're working with, because a lot of times when you're bringing these people together, they may or may not know each other. And the people that know each other better actually do a better job of engaging right away, because they're not afraid to take a chance and say something because they know those folks. So name tags are beneficial. I've also learned that some people prefer to work on paper because the laminated sheets have a lot of glare, and so they prefer to work on just paper. And so while we do laminate all of our sheets so that we can reuse them over and over again, we also hand out individual packets that include the worksheets that they can take home with them, and some people do prefer to utilize those. Dry erase markers, while they're super handy for our cleanup, are not good, because as we move papers around and shuffle them on the table, it wipes off too easily and you end up losing that information. And the other thing that along with the papers on the table, by the time you get through a couple or three of these activities, already your table is so cluttered that we have discovered that we do a worksheet, we do keep our records, and then we pick up those worksheets so we don't have so much clutter on the table. So that's something else that we have learned through doing this. And then, like I said, because those folks have gotten to know each other, they get to side conversations. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not always a good thing either. So it's something that you do have to manage as the teacher. So if this has you interested, you're intrigued, this is where you find it. All of these links take you to the same place, the QR code, all of them work. I know that some people cannot do shortened links, so I put the full link on there, but this is where you can actually get that information and that curricula if you wanted to download the materials. They are open and free at this point in time, and I don't foresee that being different. But I would ask that if you do try to use this, I want to hear about it so that I know what kind of an impact I'm making elsewhere. And if there's things that we can build together that we can use across state lines, because I think that's really a cool way of handling it. So with that, I'll just share a few producer testimonials. The one that I am probably the most proud of, I had a student come in, and I say student, he was probably just out of college. And he came in and he walked in and he sat back and he crossed his arms and he said, I have never set foot in a cornfield. I have always been on the back of a horse wrangling cattle. I don't know anything about agronomy. And he rocked it the whole day. And he is the one that they're referring to when the second one, when he said, I plan on being there, but he ended up having some kind of medical emergency. And so he sent this kid that didn't know anything. And he said they talked about it for days afterwards. And that student actually was the one that taught the farmer that had been doing it for a long time how to do some things. And I was like, this is awesome. I must be doing something right. So I'll take questions later, but you're sure welcome to contact me.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Feel free to put that link in the chat for folks.
Sure, will do.
I know that's a great example, and one, I've seen the watershed game as an example, or I've seen kind of interactive activities around drought. So it's very cool to see one around the land application of manure, around nutrient management. And I know there's a lot of plans for how to expand it, but excited to share it in its current form. All right, up next we have Jess Esplanche. Jess is the Sustainable Agriculture Outreach Director from the National Wildlife Federation. And Jess is going to be talking a little bit more about the Grow More program. Again, thinking about agriculture and how to teach conservation, particularly to an agricultural or landowner audience. So Jess, I will turn it over to you.
Good.
Looks great.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm excited to talk through reaching beyond the choir through social science training. So essentially, we're going to talk through a program called Grow More. But first, let me set the stage for why this program exists. We came across where we were working with a lot of farmers and a lot of outreach professionals, where the outreach professionals were holding field day events or workshops, and the same people were showing up again and again. So they were having like people who were already using conservation practices. They were having people that were just showing up for the free food, but they weren't actually reaching the people who they wanted to reach, the people who weren't showing up in NRCS offices, the people who weren't coming to conservation districts. So we decided to develop a program that would help outreach professionals better reach those farming audiences. So this was essentially a outreach and messaging training. A lot of the people that we talked to over the years were saying, hey, we have a lot of training in the technical aspect. We have a lot of training in which programs are there to offer farmers and ranchers, but we don't necessarily know the best way to communicate those programs and those practices. And so we took a step back and decided to create a training for outreach professionals. And this was a 2-year process, probably even a little bit longer. I came in around 2016. We did a road mapping meeting back in 2012 that we used as a basis, literature reviews, pilot studies, surveys, etc., working with academics, other nonprofits, farmer and ranchers, to make sure that we were understanding the top challenges and opportunities that we needed to talk about in this training if it was going to actually provide support to those doing work on the ground. So the Grow More training is essentially a 2 half-day training or a 1 full-day training. We split it up into 2 days, essentially because it's a lot of information. It's a lot of theory. It's a lot of background information to be able to provide a foundation for application. So my background is in social science. A lot of the people who helped to develop this also have backgrounds in social science and behavior change. So that is the lens that this is taken from, of really trying to understand the models, the motivations of the communities that we are trying to serve. And so we have 6 different modules. We go through introduction to behavior change. So this is a lot of the theories of why people do the things that they do, and making sure that we understand essentially like not only why people make the decisions, but how can you change your messaging to match those motivations behind those decisions. So also trying to understand the influence of social norms and culture. So essentially, like, if the farming community has always done this and their father and their grandfather has always done this, what social norms exist and how do we kind of use those social norms to be able to create new norms that are more in alignment with sustainable agriculture. So then we have messaging. So essentially, how do you change the words that you're using so that they're more like appropriate for an audience that may be more risk averse, right? And how do you make sure that you're using framing that is not just here's a bunch of numbers on a fact sheet, but making sure that it's presented in a way that the audience wants to listen to it. And then we do reframing. Reframing is essentially how do you hold events that people want to show up to. So rather than holding a cover crop field day or a water quality field day, where if you're not interested in those topics to begin with, you're probably not going to show up to a field day about them. So how do you hold something on a problem that a farmer is having? Like, how do you hold a field day event around drought, right? Where cover crops, no-till, rotational grazing may be a solution that you're offering, but not necessarily the theme of the event, and going down through a bunch of different possibilities that might match the motivations of the audience in a local area. We like to also talk about impact and evaluation strategies. I was giving one of these trainings yesterday in North Carolina, and out of the 20 people that were in the room, 1 person did any type of evaluation. So just talking through like, how do you plan out an event? And then how do you make sure that you're having the impact that you want to have? Preparing and managing speakers. So making sure that even if you get the right people in the room, that you make sure that the message and the speakers that you have are consistent with your objective of your event. And then we always have a planning session at the end. This is a time to take all of the theory and all of the information that we've presented and make sure that they're able to apply it to an upcoming event or an outreach activity that they're planning. So we're there, NWF staff is there as coaches, but they're really working through future events and making sure that how they can tweak things so that they can reach a new audience. So by the numbers we've given, so this is a little out of date, meaning like, I think we counted up all of our trainings about 2 months ago. So we've done 62 trainings in 19 states and have over 1,100 participants. I say it's a little out of date because in the last 2 months, we've given, I believe, 8 more trainings. And in July, we have 6 trainings alone. So we've kind of spread these out over the countryside. We have a lot of them in the Mississippi River Basin, but have done individual states as well, and are expanding all the more. So once people know that this program exists, a lot of people are interested in taking it, but it's at the point right now that we're just not able to meet the demands that this training has. But ultimate question, right? Is it working? It's great that people can go through communications and messaging training, but is it actually making a difference with the populations that they're trying to reach. So the way that we figured this out is we do a lot of evaluation. So we have a full-time evaluation scientist on staff. We do a pre-evaluation before the training takes place. We do it 6 to 8 weeks after the event. We try not to do it right at the event because people tend to not necessarily have any behavior change at that point, right? Like they're not doing things differently. And then we do it 6 months after the event, 1 year after the event, and then at this point, we've now done it 5 years after the event as well to be able to do a holistic impact. We have a lot of results. I'm going to go over a couple of them. So we have quantitative and we have qualitative. Quantitative, we look at like just the breakdown of who has come. So as you can see, the majority of the people that come are NRCS, soil and water conservation districts, extension, other nonprofits. This program is specifically designed for outreach professionals and not necessarily on the ground producers and farmers. That being said, a lot of people wear multiple hats. So farmers and producers have come as well if they have a like more outreach capacity outside of just hosting field days. So this one is essentially looking at increasing confidence to be able to do things. And this is on out of a 4-point scale. So 4 is the highest that they could rank it. One of the things that we go over is like identifying middle adopters or that next outreach group that we're trying to reach, talking about risk mitigation, building social acceptance, evaluation methods, etc. So as you can see, like everybody is increasing their confidence to be able to talk about these things, increase them, and actually integrate them into their outreach methodology. As I said, we also have qualitative results. This is done through surveys, but is also done through, we call people to follow up to make sure that we're getting a holistic understanding of how this training has impacted people. So one of the questions that we asked in the pre-survey is essentially like, what's the most challenging part of your job? So that we can be able to integrate that into each individual training. Because we give this training in so many different states, we want to make sure that we can have local examples that we can use. So a lot of the times it's brought up that people are having trouble finding and reaching the right audience, making sure that they can actually convince people once they reach them. And one of the things that we do not touch on, but was brought into one of the most challenging is having funding available, but also having turnover, et cetera, of making sure that they have the right people to be able to give technical assistance, for example. And then lastly, understanding whether they're making a difference on the ground. So the Grow More program has tried to touch on all of this. Then there are some very nice quotes and testimonials that you can read on our website. These are just a couple of them. Essentially, a lot of people, just like the last presentation, showed up because they were told that they needed to show up. And then they were very happy that they felt like this was something, a type of training that they have not received in the past. Then my final slide is just what's next. So we have an outreach toolkit on our website. I can put the link in the chat. It essentially gives like videos and different documents to be able to help with planning, help with evaluation, kind of takes it as like the Grow More 2.0. And then we're working on additional modules. We just finished one for non-operating landowner outreach. We will be working on historically underserved partnerships in the next year, and then social media tips and tricks for actually getting their advertisements out in the world. And then lastly, as I said, we have demand that far outweighs our ability to give these trainings. And so we've developed a train the trainer model, which we are calling offshoots. And in the next year, we're training 25 people to be able to give these Grow More trainings independently of NWF staff. So we would be there as coaches, but essentially we want people that if they want this training, that they will be able to get the training without and with NWF involvement at a high level. Like we will be giving the science, we'll be giving the resources, but would actually have other people give this training so that it can spread more quickly across the country. And that is it from me.
Great, thank you so much. Jess. I really appreciate it. And a little shout out too, I'm sure we can maybe get to this during the Q&A, but this time Jess was talking about Grow More, which is for outreach professionals. Jess, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's also a program in the portfolio called Conservation Champions, really for producers as well. So again, kind of taking a similar model of the social science. So Leslie was talking a lot about role playing, and then Jess talking about using, communication and social science. So I think they're innovative examples. Jess, you're nodding, so hopefully I got it right.
You did. You're good.
Okay, great. I just wanted to mention that for folks in case they wanted to hunt, peck, and look for a little bit more. Okay, next we're gonna feature Becky Sapper, and we're actually gonna turn a little bit. So we've been talking about agricultural constituents, landowners, producers, and then agricultural outreach. But now we're gonna talk about volunteers with Wisconsin's National Naturalist Program. Becky is the director of the Wisconsin National Naturalist Program. And has been with Extension since 2007. And she's really talking about some innovative ways. I've never seen a program quite like this, so excited for her to show it, that she's really teaching about conservation and the Great Lakes habitats virtually to the volunteers that are really working within her program of Wisconsin Master Naturalist. So Becky, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
All right. How's that showing up? Pretty good?
Looks great.
All right, excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to be here and share this information with you about our program. As Ann mentioned, I direct the Wisconsin Master Naturalist Program, and while I'd love to spend my time talking about the entire program to you today, I said I would highlight one of the tools that we're utilizing within the program, and that's our Great Lakes Trek. But to set the stage, I just wanted to share a little bit of information about our program so you understood how it fits within our structure. So we are a program we started in 2013, and we support a network of volunteers and instructors that are dedicated to conservation service, leadership, and lifelong learning. And since we started in 2013, we've trained over 1,700 master naturalists, and through that time, they have already volunteered and given back over 300,000 hours of volunteer service. So there's a lot of great impact that master naturalists have across our state. We implement this through 15 to 20 in-person trainings that are 40 hours in length, and we do this annually. We're a train the trainer program, so we actually work with host organizations and train them on how to deliver the program, and then they deliver the program across the state. The map that you see with all of the pins in it are zip code pins, not individual pins of individuals, but zip codes where we have master naturalists that have been trained across the state. So we do have a pretty good distribution across the state, but I also wanted to have this map up here too, just to highlight also our shorelines of our Great Lakes with Lake Superior and Lake Michigan, just to highlight where I'm going to lead into next. But after our trainings, our master naturalist agreed to do 40 hours of volunteer service and get 8 hours of advanced training each year to maintain their certification. So we realized that you can't become a master of anything in 40 hours. And so we asked folks to continue to do their lifelong learning through 8 hours of advanced training each year. And our training really is just to light the spark, and then their passions create that flame in the fire afterwards, and our advanced trainings just keep that kindling going in those fires. So, and I did want to also mention this year we've just rolled out our newest version of our training guide, which I'm realizing is a curriculum in itself that I could have talked about for this full presentation as well. But I did just want to highlight we have 11 different sections in our training guide that are each authored by experts from around the state and cover a nice variety of information. And this is what constitutes our training materials. And we have it available both in a hard copy and digital formats for our participants as well. But I wanted to focus a little bit on our Great Lakes Trek. So the Great Lakes Trek came about, I call it a pandemic product because it was one of the ways that we did a little bit of a pivot during the pandemic and started looking about how we can deliver information to our participants in a accessible way without redoing our entire 40-hour training. So we decided to focus on an advanced training instead. So this product is an accessible. It's an online asynchronous learning tool. So it's a learning opportunity that people can do on their own time, at their own pace, at home. It's open to anyone, so you don't need to be a master naturalist to take the Great Lakes Trek. And it is targeted for adult learners, but is also appropriate for grades 9 to 12. And our master naturalists, when they take the Great Lakes Trek, automatically earn their full 8 hours of advanced training. And so we have sometimes folks that want to do their advanced trainings all in one shot and don't want to go to, say, 8 different 1-hour workshops. So this is a good opportunity for them to do that. The introduction to the Great Lakes Trek focuses on all of the Great Lakes, but most of the content does skew a little bit more towards Lake Superior and Lake Michigan for obvious reasons for our state. And the participants have access to it for 365 days. So there's plenty of time for them to work through it. They don't have to get it all done in one setting. They can take a full year if they want to work on it as well. And then our trekkers, as we call them, are invited to participate in a Great Lakes Field Day, which is hosted by partners across our Great Lakes watershed, and is a way to reinforce what they learned online through an in-person field day. And so I had some slides. I was going to demo parts of the training, but then I realized that our instructional design team that worked on this Great Lakes Trek did a really good job of creating a couple promotional videos for us. And we have a short video and a longer video. And so I wanted to show the longer video, which is about 2.5 minutes, that goes through different aspects of the trek so that you can actually see more of it than me just talking about it with slides. So I'm going to share that next, and also just wanted to say a shout out to our instructional design team, especially Wendy Schweitzer, who did a heavy lift on creating not just the promotional materials, but the entire trek as well. All right, I'm going to play this now.
Join the Wisconsin Master Naturalist Program online for a virtual Great Lakes Trek. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us on our guided hike of Wisconsin's Great Lakes. A team of Wisconsin Master Naturalists will be leading our trek as we explore 4 different trails covering the land, water, life, and people of Wisconsin's Great Lakes. Stop at the waypoints to learn key concepts about our Great Lakes through written content, videos, hundreds of graphics, games, and fun quizzes. Walk the land trail back through time to the Ice Age.
We are fortunate here in Wisconsin to be a water-rich state.
Canoe down the water trail through the seasons. Hike the Life Trail through the Great Lakes Aquatic Food Web. Walk the People Trail through Wisconsin history and coastal communities. Check your knowledge with quiz questions and games. Stop at overlooks to discover extra activities. and get inspired to explore Wisconsin's Great Lakes. Learn more on the Wisconsin Master Naturalist website.
And now it's not letting me off this side. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to also reiterate from that video that we do have four trails that we use to highlight the content within the video. So the land trail, the water trail, the life trail, and the people trail. So each of these trails, basically there's key concepts for each of the trails, and we have different waypoints within the trails that we use to reinforce the key concepts. And so for each of these different trails. So for instance, for land, we really are looking at the geology and glacial history, looking at the soils and landforms, really that base layer that everything else stands on, literally. So we start with land trail, then we go to the water trail, and looking at the characteristics of the waters of the Great Lakes and trophic classifications, the aquatic habitats like freshwater estuaries, but also looking at temperature and water levels, and then specifically talking about some water quality challenges and restoration efforts that are ongoing in the water world aspect of things. The life trail, we focus on both aquatic and terrestrial plants and animals that are within the watershed and looking at specific ways that they've adapted. And we also look at some of the challenges that invasive species face for our Great Lakes communities. And speaking of communities, that's the next aspect on the last trail is the people trail. So we focus on our coastal communities. We look a lot about the economies that are affected in our coastal communities with the fisheries, shipping, agriculture, tourism, as well as our cultural traditions around the Great Lakes. And we utilize this section to really expand a little bit more on restoration and protection efforts within the Great Lakes as well, too. After each of the trails, we have a overlook section, and this was really deliberate to try and get folks to not do the entire trek in one setting, but to maybe do it trail by trail. And the overlooks gave a natural spot to stop and take a break, but also was a spot where we could encourage people to go outside. So one of the options to click in the overlooks is to explore, and we have suggestions for them to get outside and get away from the computer and reinforce what they're learning. And so we also have other aspects within those overlooks to reinforce the content, to engage the brain in different ways of thinking by playing games, and then also a virtual quest that gets sent out to a different platform that Wisconsin Sea Grant and Upham Woods put together for virtual quest, which is a whole nother activity. And like any good hike, we like to re-nourish ourselves and replenish the energy with gorp. But instead of good old raisins and peanuts, for us, it's good old resources and places. And so this is where we have all the transcripts, the glossaries, our key concepts, all the written information are in PDFs. So if people wanted to print them out and keep them forever, then they would have an opportunity to do that. Otherwise, like I said earlier, they do have access to this content for a full year. And then, like any good extension program, we like to do evaluations. So this is a graphic of knowledge change. So on the left side of the graphs is an individual's assessment of their own knowledge prior to taking the trek. And then on the right side of the graphs are their self-perceived knowledge after they finished the trek and when they took the survey. So you'll notice for all four of the different trails, they started with more than 45% of the folks knowing nothing to not much. And at the end of when they're taking the survey, almost over 90% have a great amount or a fair amount of knowledge, with more than 45% in all four of these different trails having a great amount of knowledge. So I feel that's a really good knowledge change shift. So how do you take the trek? You can folks register for the trek through our website, and it is $90 for general public or $75 for Wisconsin Master Naturalists to take it. There is a financial hardship question, so if that is too much for individuals, there's a way to reduce that registration fee to $45 in the registration process. So we'll put the link into the chat so that you have a direct access to get to that. But like I said, anyone literally in the world can take this trek and learn something about our Great Lakes, especially Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. And we are looking to make this a series. So I'm seeking funding to look at different ways to do different treks. So in our driftless area, for our inland lakes, our Northwoods, our prairies, our wetlands, but I'm also open to looking at treks really for nearly any topic. So if there's funders out there that would like to do a trek with wildlife or with rivers or any area, I think we have a really good system that we've created that is easy to replicate with different information. So yeah, our thought is that we really are looking to have people learn more and then take action. And that's what Master Naturalists really do, is take the information that they're learning and go out and do volunteer service and do education, citizen science, and stewardship, and share the information that they're learning. So we're hoping that our treks do that. So that's all I have. So I'll hand it back to Anne.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go into some questions we have here. We do have about 10 minutes here for questions, so make sure and continue to add those questions or upvote others in the chat. Looks like we have a question for Leslie up first. It looks like the activity is built for a hypothetical area. I know yours is the kind of role-playing game. Is that right? Do you have run into issues with people wanting more real case scenarios?
All right, so we actually anticipated that we would have that. Actually, I think all of the pictures that I utilized are actually of people doing it out in the western part of the state, and the map is actually showing, is actually a Google map of my area in the northeastern part of the state that we then retracted out the houses and things so that it looked more generic. Because we were doing this Minnesota, it was more representative of both areas that way. But ironically, the only thing that they say when we go out west anyway is, boy, that's a lot of surface water, because they just don't have that out there. But you know, if I just tell them, you know, just remember that all of those dashed lines on there is actually intermittent, so it's only like when it rains. So that might be like their waterways instead that they would farm through normally. And so we don't really have that issue because we've made it more generic. Would it make sense in every situation like that? No, probably not. But for the state of Nebraska, it seems to work because in many ways we have the state is the same as like their 1 mile square sections there, and so they can just look at it from section to section, and they're looking at those individual fields. And while the map might be generic, the big map might be generic, those placement cards that with the actual fields, those are much more specific, and you can tailor those to the area more than you could with just the basic map.
Great, yeah, that's helpful. I know I've always found in the educational program, sometimes you're like tense, or people are going to be willing to try this, willing to give it a shot. And people are a lot more willing to try things, especially when you're there face to face asking them, or to, you know, make some generalizations or things, or like things back to them. Then sometimes you think in your head, you're like, oh, they're gonna poo-poo this, and actually they're open for giving it a shot. Looks like Mary has a question for Jess. Do you find that message conveyance and best practice adoption is higher if farmers share the message? And how are you delivering the post-session follow-up evaluation, email or phone? So yeah, a little bit of probably a question that might go back versus grow more, which is for the outreach professionals, and conservation champions for the farmers. And I'm sure you have a section in your training about the messenger being key, right?
Yeah, we definitely do. So yeah, exactly what you just said. like the Conservation Champions program is designed so that farmers are speaking to other farmers, right? Like somebody from National Wildlife Federation is not going to go and tell a farmer how to farm, even if I have a farming background, right? One of the things that we do in Grow More is talk about how to work with farmer messengers and how to kind of build innovator success so that you can use them as leaders and messengers to farmers in their area. Yeah, there's lots of studies on where farmers trust information, and yeah, it's definitely other farmers. It's pretty sad how low extension and like conservation district staff are. However, in areas with like really high cover crop adoption, there is more trust in those messengers, but they've taken the time to build those relationships and they don't have as high of turnover, et cetera. So there's other things at play besides just this is a farmer or this is not a farmer. As far as the evaluation is concerned, we use a product called Cultrix. So it sends out emails and sends people and like reminders to send us back survey data. So we don't have to constantly remind people to fill these out. I will say that we start using incentives to get people to respond to surveys in the 1 year and more category. Like if you've taken a Grow More training 5 years ago, you might need a little bit more incentive to fill that out. But we also do phone follow-ups to a select number of participants just so that we can get more data-rich information.
Sure, especially with the outreach professionals are going to be comfortable with an online survey. And that's a great message about, farmers being leaders for other farmers and that being a key message. Leslie's nodding with us. I think anyone that works in ag can testify to that, as well as there's loads of surveys and data to show that as well.
Yeah, that was actually part of the driver behind getting the very interactive, because they're teaching each other instead of me doing a lot of that teaching.
Great. Another question for Leslie. How are manure nutrient inputs factored in for post-harvest cornfields where cattle glean kernels from the ground surface?
So you're talking grazing, and we don't actually have that activity yet, but it's on my radar. That one of the things that is coming in the future is the Soil Health Nexus is planning on adding some activities, and that's one that I'd like to see us do, because that's something that is not just the nutrients, but also that the action of those animals being out there can really impact our soils and how that works. So that's something that is hopefully coming soon to the curricula.
Yeah, absolutely. Sandra has a question for Becky, and I think you answered this, and you have to live in Wisconsin to complete the program. I think that's a no, you said?
Correct. For the Great Lakes Trek, anyone can participate from anywhere. But I will note on this too, if folks want to participate in our standard volunteer trainings, we do have reciprocity with all of our neighboring states. So if somebody takes the training in Wisconsin, they can volunteer in Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, and get hours for getting their certification in Wisconsin. And then we just share that information back to the other states. So.
That's cool. I did not know that. And I work at Extension, so you would think I would know that kind of thing. I was curious, Becky, I had a question for you. I'm going to sneak in, is I know there is a cost, and you talked about having, scholarships, or if it's a financial hardship. Have you seen a lot of success with the cost? I think that we've seen, that's a constant question we get with some of our educational program. Do we charge? Do we not? Does that make it less affordable, but we have to be able to, pay for these services? So I'm just curious to know that your experience with this particular program.
We actually haven't had a lot of people requesting the financial assistance for this, which I find interesting. We do have a process set up in our registration to make it easy for folks to do it. We don't ask for financial information. We don't ask them to apply and then get a code. They basically just have to select an answer to a question that says this, the $90 or $75 is a financial hardship for me. And if they say, yes, it is, then it automatically reduces it to 45. So we set up a registration process to make it really easy for folks to remove that barrier. But so far, we haven't had a lot of people selecting that it is a financial hardship for them. So.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay, we have one more question and then I think we'll probably be at time. This question's for Leslie. Do you find that some producers are standoffish in participating in something that could be perceived as a game or a lighthearted poop emoji? You're going to the Manure Expo floor. How do people feel about that? And yeah, I think it's a question. How much humor do you put in it? Does it help or hurt?
Yeah, so for some people it definitely does, but the majority it is not. Actually, they see others being engaged in it and they want to be a part of it because the others are already engaged. So there's a certain amount of peer pressure that actually does happen within the room because I will occasionally have a producer that is like, nope, I am going to sit back and I'm going to cross my arms and not learn anything in this class because I've done it before and I don't care and I know it all. And that does happen where regardless of how you teach, I think there's always that one person in the back that wants to just sit there and not listen. But the majority is really not an issue. Surprisingly, Nebraska has embraced the poop emoji. Maybe it's outside of Nebraska too, but Nebraska really has. Like we have squishy poop emojis that we hand out. Our manure team does. They say manure.unl on the bottom, so we call them our business cards, and they are a hot commodity. So
know your audience. Coming back to Jess, right? Know your audience, and they're
Yes.
cool with the poop emoji. I do. Yeah, it is. I think it is shocking too, like how much people are willing to try something if it is an activity like that. If you have them there in the room, they've shown up. We've had that even with like telling your own story or framing things differently when it comes to like trying new ways of communicating from Jess's piece. Sometimes people can be unaware, but if you have them there to give it a shot in person. Folks are sometimes more willing than you might anticipate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think you're right, though, just framing it at the beginning of the day that you're expecting them to participate because it's going to be a real bore if they're not going to, or it's going to be really annoying for them if they are not going to. And so setting it up at the beginning doesn't seem like it's a real big issue.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone, to each of our speakers for joining us today. I did put their emails up here on the screen in case you had a question or you wanted to learn more about their programming, you can reach out. As I noted, this presentation is recorded. We will make sure and post it on our website, northcentralwater.org, as well as the power presentation slides. So you can access those and share them. Be sure to tune into our website for future webinars. We have one coming up next week, Wednesday at the same time on activating the soil and soil's biological properties. And then next week, we're going to be talking about aquatic invasive species on the current webinar series. So we hope you all can join us then. Thanks so much for being here today and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you so much.